Before everybody leaves for the policy cocktail, which, well, it's a funny thing, policy cocktail, is it something you can drink? Is it kind of, cocktail drink? Anyway, I have the honor and the privilege to summarize this conference, the first installment of what I sincerely believe will be the first of the many. If I was to say just one word which summarized or it's actually two words which summarize the whole conference, it would be building competence. Because many people have many strong opinions about the future of the European Union, but there is still quite a lack of competence in Slovakia and in the region about what would be the best way to do it. So if there are basically three aspects of the discussions here, economic, political, and kind of democracy legitimacy, I will try to stick to my guns and talk more about the first one, and I will have just one remark on the last one at the end. So I will try not to summarize all of the discussions here. There will be a summary, the official summary, published after the conference. I will just try to pick some of the key points, some of the most interesting topics and punchlines which kind of stuck into my memory. So first of all, a good thing is that compared to a year ago or 2 years ago, it looks like everybody kind of agrees about what were the most important reasons which brought us to the current mess. And by the current mess, I mean the problem with the debts and problem with growth and employment. These three are, according to what I took from the discussions, previously unsustainable public finances, previously unsustainable levels, and the development of private debts and related problems in the banking sector, and then macroeconomic imbalances related to falling competitiveness and stagnant labor markets, especially in the periphery. So now the question is, okay, this was in the past, everybody agrees on it. What is the situation now and what should we do about it? Good news is that it looks like the European Union and the Eurozone is not going to explode and end up in the hot hell of countries leaving and having a catastrophic recession, at least not in 2013. So this is probably for now off the table. The real danger right now is different, is that we might actually die of cold and starvation of a double dip recession. And that related tensions, political tensions, will present obstacles to the European projects. No, I do not have a solution for that, but I've heard a couple of very interesting remarks about it. Two of them were actually made already during the last night's quotatorium, and because it was held under Chatham rules, I cannot tell you who made them, but I can tell you what kind of figures made them. The first one was made by a very senior Slovak politician, and he asked the question whether there is such animal as having a pro-growth or growth-friendly fiscal consolidation, hinting at that there is a significant inherent contradiction between consolidating public finance and having growth and employment. He was opposed by a senior central bank board member who said that he does not see any kind of contradiction like that. We should not be obsessed by unobservable things like fiscal multipliers. We should stick to our plan, and in the end, everything will be all right. Well, I do not want to get into this kind of discussions. Although some of you might have read the letter Olli Rehn, the ECFIN commissioner, sent to the finance ministers, and this is actually talk of the town in Brussels right now, probably a bit. So I will just give you the economics point of view. well, the unobservable things. Obviously, you cannot really touch physical multiplier, but you cannot touch and see an electron or a genome. So, you know, if you're a scientist, you don't really care that you have to deal with abstract notions. The question is whether you can measure it in a meaningful way and whether it is actually useful in policy debates and in real life. And the issue of fiscal multiplier, that's a bad word. I mean, it's a difficult word, but it really answers the most important question. If you have to consolidate your public finance, if you have to lower your future debts, what is the immediate negative impact on the economy? And this is the crucial question. So I do not think that we should not be talking about fiscal multipliers. So I will be talking about them, and I will agree with them that there is no such thing as growth-friendly fiscal consolidation. If you have to consolidate public finance, it will hurt. It will slow down the economy. It will increase your unemployment, no matter what. But you don't have to be fatalistic about it, because not all consolidations are the same. The IMF has run a series of very interesting calculations last year, and OECD replicated them. Even us at the Ministry of Finance, we've done the same with the Slovak data, and I think the message is pretty robust. If you are interested in not really dampening the short-term growth, you should increase your taxes. If you are interested in not hurting long-term growth that much, you should be cutting expenditures. Obviously, this is a general story. It depends on what you define as a short-term and long-term, but this is basically it. Also, not all taxes and not all expenditures were created equal. It's definitely worse to cut investment than to cut social transfers. It's worse to increase social security insurance than to increase property or consumption taxes. So this is all well known, and you can, according to your political preferences, choose whether you will prefer one poison or the other. Then there was another question which was raised by several speakers. The question of squaring the circle of putting together politics and economics. The question was how to make structural reforms which are important for the survival of the country, even in medium term, and getting re-elected also in medium term. And I think actually both literature and Slovak experience is that there is no contradiction in these. OECD studies has shown that political leaders are not being punished for doing significant structural reforms more than not doing it. I will give you an example, a very recent example. There was a pretty major pension reform pushed through Slovak Parliament in the summer last year, and if you just looked at it, it had many things which would be considered very harmful. You know, increasing the pension age, lowering the indexation of pensions, cutting the private savings in half, and there was no popular backlash. I do not really have an explanation for that, but it looks like sometimes when you are very decisive and you have a momentum and the time is right, you are not being punished for structural reforms. Sometimes it's just a mess. Healthcare reform from 8 years ago, it's an example. The governments are many times punished for not doing structural reforms. I wouldn't be surprised if the current government was punished by voters for not doing anything about education during its term. And this is actually something you can observe again and again in many countries. You are not necessarily being punished for making structural changes to the economy. Well, my last point is not economic. It will not be political. It will be cultural, actually. The question was, well, there was this parable being told by our Finnish friend about the bicycle, about you know, every crisis in the European Union obviously end up with more Europe. And it's because European Union is like a bicycle. When it's moving forward, you can make it stable. When it stops, it will fall. And the question is, what would happen if we actually started moving backwards? It's very difficult on the actual material bicycle, and we've never tried it with the European Union as well. So let's assume that real solutions to the crisis of the European integration we are facing right now would be more Europe, and the main obstacle is actually political, that more Europe may or may not be palatable to the European voters, because there may or may not be such thing as a European political nation. I am not going to go into discussion whether it's good to have or not to have a European political nation, a European political community. Well, that's probably a better word for it. But I do know two things. I know that you cannot create a political community by decree. It is not possible that the elites will agree upon it and then all the good people and good peoples of Europe will just agree. But I do know that you can create institutional conditions, and you can burn institutional barriers to building it. I will just ask you one question. How many of you, please raise your hands, how many of you have lived, studied, or worked for more than a year in a country of the European Union which is different than your home country? So it's maybe almost a half. So basically, my point is very simple. If you create institutional settings which will allow and maybe even support people to live in different countries of the EU, you will create a political community without actually having a design for it. And then all these discussions will be meaningless, because we will feel European the same way as we feel ourselves Slovak or Dutch or French or British. And well, I will probably stop with that. Thank you. And see you on the next one.